All right, today we're going to talk about the Bitcoin supply shock, and it's actually pretty close. And this is going to be my first long form video, so please bear with me. I'm still learning some stuff, but let's get right into it. Today's disclaimer, not financial advice. Of course, you guys already know that, but let's jump right into the story today. So let's first talk about some hopium because everybody likes hopium. Now, these are the monthly candles for all the previous cycles, and as you can see, obviously, the reason why we're here is because we're expecting a parabolic run, and that clearly hasn't happened yet. Now, back in 2021, we had an abbreviated cycle that was because of FTX. Hopefully, that doesn't happen again. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But in 2025, all things go to plan. We should have another 1 to 2 months of green candles, if not even more. And we'll talk about that as well. So, hash rate, you guys have seen the hash rate chart before, usually very correlated with the Bitcoin price. So, hash rate just hit another all time high and it just keeps going higher and higher and higher. This is basically the difficulty of mining Bitcoin keeps getting more and more difficult, which also in turn it further secures the Bitcoin network. So the higher the hash rate is, the more difficult mining is, but also the more secure the Bitcoin network is. So supply shock is what I was talking about earlier. I know you guys have seen this chart before. This is the OTC left on, I'm sorry, this is the Bitcoin still on OTC desk, which is over the counter. This is where huge whales like Michael Saylor tend to buy their Bitcoin. As you can see, that OTC number is going way down. The thing about this is a lot of the OTC is from miners. Obviously, they mine the Bitcoin. You got big miners like I'm sorry, Marathon, Iron, all these huge miners. They mine hundreds of Bitcoin a day, and then they sell them to over the counter to big whales, as I was saying. But a lot of these miners actually hold on to their Bitcoin. So if you combine the miners holding their Bitcoin with all these big whales buying the Bitcoin, then it looks something like this, where that chart keeps going down and down and down. And as you can see, the correlated line, that white line up there, that is the price. Of course, the further the blue or purple goes down, the more the white line goes up. So it's inversely correlated, obviously. The less supply, I'm sorry, the more demand, the less supply, the price goes up. Pretty simple stuff, guys. But it is pretty exciting, and this is what Jeff Parker's talking about as well. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't really know what the hell this chart is supposed to point out, but he's in the same boat. He thinks that the supply shock is getting pretty close. And I know you guys have heard supply shock before, especially if you've been in Bitcoin for a while. But with all the amount of Bitcoin that's being bought up right now, it is close, and we just got to be a little bit more patient. So James Lavis, a great follow on X. He pointed this out. The Federal Reserve website has a chart that shows how far the U.S. dollar purchasing power has gone down. So this is from what is this, 1971, and it's gone down over 90%, or almost 90%, whatever, right? So this is, of course, correlated. This is one of the main reasons why people are in Bitcoin in the first place, is because they want to get out of this hellhole, this rat race of where you put your money in U.S. dollars. If you save money in U.S. dollars, you literally lose money. So it's counterintuitive, and that's why so many people are turning to Bitcoin. That's why you see stuff like gold taking off as well. But this is a really good point from James Lavish. I mean, if you look at this chart, if you ask somebody, and it could be anybody, right? If they don't know anything about financials or markets or anything like that, if they look at this chart and just ask them, do you think this chart is going to continue to go down, or do you think it's going to rebound? 99% of people, if they have half a brain cell, will say, no, it looks like it's going to keep going down in that downtrend. So that's where the US dollar is going. Of course, if you know anything about history, every single fiat currency eventually goes to zero. The US dollar is no different. So, more supply shock. As you guys know, MicroStrategy or Strategy, they own a ton of Bitcoin, 630,000, I believe, which is just absolutely insane. Just look at the amount of cash they hold. None, almost none. And this goes back to, it's funny because 50 million is a lot for someone like me, but for a company worth over $105 billion, it's nothing, right? So this goes back to what I was saying on the previous slide, where fiat currency is going to go to zero, and that's why you see more and more people adopting the strategy and putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet because this is revolutionary, right? What Strategy is doing to Bitcoin, I think will eventually replace the bond market because bonds are a losing asset, right? If you put your money in T-bills, you get 5% back. Well, that's not even going to account for inflation. So not only do you lose money in saving money, like in putting it in your savings, you also lose money if you invest in T-bills. So it just doesn't make any sense, and that's why you see Strategy here holding $71 billion in Bitcoin. They're not interested in holding cash. And Warren Buffett, I actually know Warren Buffett's retired, but Berkshire Hathaway, they need to take some notes because they hold like $300 billion in cash and they've lost like 10% of its value of that value of those dollars because it's just sitting there in the last 5 years. So their money, their cash pile is literally losing value as I'm showing you this video, right? So that's why so many companies are adopting the Bitcoin strategy. And then some more supply shock. It's funny because we were just talking about Strategy, the largest Bitcoin treasury company in the world. Well, Coinbase, apparently years ago, Brian Armstrong said he was considering doing something pretty much exactly like Strategy, but like back in like 2014 or 2015 or something like that. I don't know if that's true or not, but if he had done that, Coinbase would probably be one of the biggest companies in the world right now. Obviously, you see, Strategy gone up 3,000% in the last 5 years. If Coinbase started the Bitcoin strategy like back in 2015 or 16, whatever it was, they would be absolutely enormous company right now. And I think Bitcoin would be much more widely adopted. It probably would be much better for the space, honestly. But they fumbled that bag. It's okay, but they're still adopting the strategy. Better late than never, I guess. I mean, Coinbase makes a ton of money off their initial business, but as you can see here, raising another $2 billion of convertible notes to buy, obviously, more Bitcoin. I mean, it doesn't say that they're going to buy more Bitcoin, but if they buy anything else with this, they're just plain stupid. I mean, I think we could all agree on that. And then this is the real hopium I want to talk to you guys about. A lot of people are familiar with seasonality nowadays. Okay, um, if you look at the chart, right, on the averages, if you look at August, right, August historically a really bad month for stocks, and historically a really bad month for Bitcoin. As you can see at the bottom there, if you look at the August column, on average it's down 0.7%, right? So it's basically flat, right? That's nothing for an asset like Bitcoin. However, if you look at the green years on the column on the very left, those are the post-halving years, right? So 2024 was a halving year, so we are now in a post-halving year, right? And if you look at those green bars, you can see August 2013, 32.8% gain. August 2017, 64.2% gain. And then August of 2021, a 13.4% gain. Not as good, but still pretty decent, right? So if you take those averages, it's a small sample size, but Bitcoin's history does tend to repeat, right? So I don't want to give you too much hopium, but there is a little bit of hopium you can cling on to, right? So Bitcoin's price, on average, in the month of August, post-halving years, is over 30%, right? So if we took today's price of Bitcoin, about 114,000 at the time of this recording, 30% of that would bring it to about $140,000. Well, it's actually probably like 145,000. Quick math, right? So that I would take that, guys. I don't know about you, but I would 100% take that. Of course, nothing's guaranteed. This is a hopium slide after all, but that's just something to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about market manipulation. A lot of people, including myself, we're not very happy about the recent downturn. I'm not going to call it a crash because Bitcoin went from like 119,000 to like 112,000 or 111,000, which is like nothing, okay? But Marty Party, he follows this stuff a lot. He's been bringing a lot of attention to it, and it's good, right? It's good that he's bringing attention to this because this is technically legal, but it's screwing over so many people in the crypto space. It's manipulating the market, and obviously a lot of people are losing money. So let me break this down real quick. Market maker Binance continues sending Sol and Ethereum to Wintermute, and the proof of reserves for August show they own none of each. So let me break this down as best as I can. So essentially what they're doing is if you look on the chart on the right here, you can see Solana 100%. Ethereum 100.67%. What does that mean? That means their funds on their exchange are backed 1-to-1, right? So remember FTX, how they basically didn't have 1-to-1 backed funds, and that's what caused the 2021 crash. That was a huge mess, right? But if you look at like, let's say for example, USDC 156%, that means they have 1.5 the amount of their customers' funds, right? So if all their customers, if all every single one of their customers withdrew their USDC, they would still have 50%, 56% of that remaining, right? So if you look at Solana, if you look at Ethereum, basically what they're doing, and this is really scary when you think about it, but what they're doing is they are manipulating the market using their customers' funds. Okay, and how do we know this? Well, if Binance is sending their money to Wintermute, or sending Sol and Ethereum to Wintermute, that means they're using customer funds. And we know this because Solana and Ethereum are at 100% ratio, which means it's backed 1 to 1. So they can't send anyone else, they can't send their own funds to Wintermute. If they're sending it to Wintermute, that means they're selling it. Okay. So essentially what they're doing is they're taking customer funds, they're selling it, which dumps the market, and then they rebuy it at a lower price. Extremely messed up, but it's legal, right? So how messed up is that, right? So I think this is a big concern, and you guys can probably tell why. It's because this has happened before, and obviously, you know, everybody knows about FTX, at least if you've been in the crypto space for more than 4 years, right? So that we do not want that to happen again. I know Binance, they've been manipulating the market for quite a while. So let's hope nothing actually comes of this, right? But in the short term, it's basically screwing everyone's bags unless you're playing the manipulation market, in which case you're making a ton of money. So let's move on from that. I thought this was pretty ironic. So you may have heard like last week, it was like Friday or Saturday or something. China actually tried to ban Bitcoin again, and I say again because it's like, I don't know, the fifth time they've tried to ban Bitcoin in the last 10 years. And then today, oh, check it out. They want to allow their first crypto stablecoin. So this is kind of like, it reminds me of like Jamie Dimon. You know, he used to say that like Bitcoin is a pet rock. And then literally like a couple weeks ago, he's now partnered with Coinbase and he offers crypto. And then he went on like CNBC or something, and then he was like, "Yeah, I don't believe in Bitcoin, but I believe in stablecoins." It's like, bro, like what are you talking about, dude? Like he's coping so hard. Obviously, he was wrong about Bitcoin. Either he was wrong about it or he's lying about it or both, right? So yeah, I mean it's just ironic, and the thing is you see so many ironic things like this, exactly like this happening all across the crypto space because first they laugh at you, then they fight you, then they join you, and we're in the process of being joined by things like China. Right. So let's talk about X stocks for a second. If you guys don't know what X stocks are, it's basically tokenized stocks, which I think is one of the most revolutionary things that crypto can possibly do. Right. And here's why. So currently the stock market is, what is it like? It's open 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, sometimes less than that. I think the total number, or the total percentage of time throughout the year that the stock market is open is less than 25%, which is absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. So what X stocks do is they provide 24-hour trading for these stocks, which is great. And you know what? The only thing that does this is crypto. And I think this will bridge the gap between crypto and equities because I mean, if you could if you can trade stocks 24/7, that would make a huge difference for so many markets. It would be insane. And there would be so much volume coming into it. So Solana, most of the volume for X stock, I think all of it. I'm not sure actually, but $2 billion of total volume through Solana, and most of it was through Tesla X, right? Over 10,000 holders of Tesla X stocks, which is great. And I personally am a holder of Solana. If you guys have seen my previous videos, you know that I am very bullish on Solana. But X stocks is going to be huge, and I think X stocks is actually one of the most revolutionary things that will ever happen to crypto. You guys heard it here first. So, Ethereum breakout. Tom Lee seems to think so, and guess what? I mean, if you're the CEO or the chairman or whatever he is of the largest Ethereum treasury company in the world, why wouldn't you be bullish on Ethereum? Why wouldn't you go on CNBC like every other day and say Ethereum's going to 20,000? Oh, actually, he didn't say that. I think he said like $15,000, right? But look, I mean, Tom Lee, he's very bullish on Ethereum. In my opinion, I think he's just coping because he's trying to pump Ethereum because obviously he's the chairman of Bitmine, right? But he's been more bullish on Bitcoin, and he hadn't really talked about Ethereum very much until he became the chairman of Bitmine. So it's kind of sus to me anyway. I'm not saying, Ethereum's it's not going to do well because it could. It's just that like there's, in my opinion, better L1s out there. Ethereum did, I think base went down for a little bit like yesterday or a couple days ago. But I mean, Tom Lee thinks it could break out. I'm all here for it because if Ethereum breaks out, if it goes on a run, I think it has to pass like 4,000. Once it passes $4,000 per Ethereum, I think we're going to go on an alt season. So I'm all for it. I hopefully Ethereum does well. I personally don't own any, but I mean, Ethereum doing well is good for the rest of the space. And then, of course, we do have other ETH treasuries. We started seeing Bitcoin treasuries first, and then Solana treasuries, and now we have Cosmos Health raising $300 million to buy Ethereum. So interesting there. I mean, there's a few Ethereum treasury companies. Some of them are doing really well, some of them aren't. But that's the thing with treasuries. I mean, it's the same thing with Bitcoin and Solana treasuries. They're up and down all the time. It's a very good opportunity if you're able to trade it, but you have to be really good at trading them. So we've been talking a lot about we've been hearing a lot about rate cuts recently, and we might actually get our rate cut finally. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, we should have had a rate cut in July. But I'm not Fed Chair Powell. I personally think he's a goddamn idiot. But like I said, what do I know, right? So it looks like I believe that the estimates right now are like 90+% of getting a rate cut in September. And that's a 25 basis point rate cut, but it looks like it's looking likely we might get a 50 basis point rate cut, which would be huge. It looks like even 75 isn't it? Well, not at once, but maybe a 75 basis point cut total, like for the rest of the year. So who knows? We might get a 50 basis point cut in August after the horrific job numbers. I don't know if that was the main reason why, but it's definitely a big reason. And like I said, Powell, you probably should have cut back in July, but whatever. Hopefully we get the rate cut. I think it's almost guaranteed we'll get at least 25 basis point cut in September, but 50 points would be great. I think that would pump the markets a lot. Now, the housing market, I just want to touch on this really quick because it is not looking good. Home sellers in the United States outnumber the buyers by over 500,000, which is a gap that has never been seen before. As you can see right here from Bitcoin News, largest gap ever recorded. That is not good. Okay, so the housing market's kind of screwed. I thought this was kind of interesting from Joe Consorti. Houses in the U.S. are 35% more expensive than they should be when adjusted to 1975 CPI and square footage. That's 17 trillion premium access across all U.S. homes. Bitcoin will absorb that excess capital over the next several decades. So this is a really interesting concept because I'm of the belief that Bitcoin will absorb capital from all markets, not just real estate, not just equities, not just trillions of dollars that are on the sideline right now. But this is a really good point. I mean, Bitcoin is going to basically, it's coming for every market, right? So it's really, really interesting and it's cool to see the developments of other markets and how Bitcoin can connect to those as well. And then I wanted to touch on this. If you guys have heard of Peter Thiel, he's a legendary investor, but there is a IPO coming out. It's called Bullish. I love that name. I love the ticker, right? But this was Peter Thiel on Joe Rogan, and he was saying how society doesn't know how to process Bitcoin. He's super bullish on Bitcoin, but what's really interesting is there is an IPO coming out. I believe it comes out in a week, like April 13th or something like that. Yeah, there you go. So let's talk about this real quick because we've had a couple IPOs recently for crypto. Circle is a really, really big one. I believe Circle IPO, like it started at like $35 or something, and then it shot up to 200. So that's crazy. That's an insane return. It's been in the news a lot. It's been in the headlines for obvious reasons. People are saying that the Bullish IPO could have something similar. So let's break it down real quick. So Bullish is an exchange filing for a 630 million IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, 4.2 billion in valuation, expected to price Tuesday on 12th and begin trading on Wednesday the 13th. So as we said, ticker BLSH, 20 million shares at 28 to $31 per share. So it's around the same as what Circle IPO'd for. Valuation range 3.8 to 4.2 billion. So you can on Robinhood and other exchanges, I believe you can basically get in line and see if you qualify for a pre-IPO buy. And it's priced between $28 and $31. If this is anything like the Circle IPO, you could make a lot of money, although you're not allowed to flip it. Basically, they're not allowing you to sell it within 30 days after it IPOs. Otherwise, you'll be banned from other IPOs. So do with that what you will. Basically, they want you to be at least medium term bullish on bullish. So there you go. But as you can see, major backer Peter Thiel, co-founder Brendan Blummer. I have no idea who the hell that is. Major investors BlackRock, ARK Invest, $200 million of shares. Underwater, JP Morgan, Jefferies, Citigroup, blah blah blah. Okay, so basically, this is another crypto IPO that has potential of doing really well. Of course, we have no idea what's going to happen to it. It could crash. IPOs more often than not, they don't do well. But the reason why this is getting so much buzz is because crypto IPOs have recently been doing pretty well. So you got to do your research on this. I thought I would bring it up because it's an exciting development in the crypto space right now, and we'll know what happens with it next week. So, last thing I want to touch on here, JD Vance, we all know, owns Bitcoin, and he did say on whatever the hell this is, Newsmax, that I'm an owner of Bitcoin. It's a great way of transacting, storing value in a modern digital age. Two things about this. Number one, it's great to hear from the Vice President of the United States. We all know the entire administration is pro Bitcoin, which is insane. It's awesome. It's a huge, huge step forward for Bitcoin. But this is also the guy, Vice President, who's supposed to be strengthening the US dollar, and we know the US dollar is screwed. So it's like if he owns Bitcoin, I mean, obviously he knows about the US dollar, the deficit, $37 trillion in debt. We talked earlier about how the US dollar is down 90% in the last 50 years. So maybe he's not too confident in the US dollar, which, let's be real, you shouldn't be. But then again, it's great that he's embracing Bitcoin and he's supporting it. And I mean, I think we should all support the United States being the crypto capital of the world, which is the agenda of the current administration. So there you have it, you guys. I appreciate you watching. This is my first long form slide video, whatever the hell you want to call it. Obviously, it was a little rusty. Hopefully, we're going to be improving these videos a lot in the future. So leave some suggestions in the comments. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great day.